If Buffett's not going long silver, I'm betting against Buffett.
Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you guys all back. And boy, I'm so glad to have back on the line Max Porterfield. He's the CEO and director of Callinex Mines, and silver has been on an absolute tear. Gold as well, and we know why, because the Fed can't stop printing. Max, welcome back.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. So you're a Texan living in Canada. What is your view on all the craziness going on down here on the back of all these riots?
I think it's ultimately going to be healthy. I see a lot of parallels to the civil rights movement in the 1970s, late 1960s, 1970s, as well as the coronavirus in the 1970s. 1976 was actually the first pandemic for the H1N1 strain, which later came back in 2009. And there was a very, very similar response by politicians at the time. I think that's been exacerbated in the more recent pandemic with the coronavirus. In terms of this racial divide, again, something similar that was happening then has not been addressed throughout the years. And this all boiling over, obviously, I'm never going to be condoning looting or this behavior pattern. But when you have a big subset of the population that is frustrated, unemployed, and has been, kind of cooped up for a long period of time, it's not surprising to see this. But ultimately, I do think that, the world's going to be a wonderful place. And, you got to go through these kind of growing pains in a lot of ways.
Yeah. If there's a silver lining in all of this, and guys, we'll talk about silver here in a little bit, but if there's a silver lining, Max, it's that people from all walks of life are really waking up to the Antifa infiltrators, the people that are coming into these big cities and causing the violence, people that don't even live in the cities where they're being bussed in to cause the violence. And to President Trump's credit, he announced just the other day that Antifa will be designated as a terrorist organization, and I think that gives the government some added power to go after these people specifically. So that's the good news. You can comment on that if you'd like, but otherwise let's just talk about the economy in the United States and globally. On the back of these COVID lockdowns, the economy was devastated, and these riots sure aren't helping. What is your 6-month to 1-year outlook for the U.S. economy and the global economy?
I'm quite optimistic. I'm always betting on the underdog, and the resiliency of human nature would reward that if you look back at history. So, if you look at copper prices, for example, that's a good bellwether barometer. They call it Dr. Copper for a reason, but you've seen copper prices rebound quite strongly around $2.45 today. I think this whole pandemic thing was a big reset, as you mentioned. I think a lot of people are going to walk away from this much different than they entered the year. And I think overall, society is moving to a much more optimistic viewpoint. I think we're really kind of going back to a lot of the mindsets that you had before, really the assassination of Kennedy in a lot of ways, which then led to eventually the tariffs by Nixon, the removal of the gold being back in the U.S. dollar. A lot of those changes were kind of reversing back on that. So it's a really exciting time in a lot of ways, I think.
Well, let me show you a chart here. I'll do a screen share, and I just want your reaction because what we're starting to see is people moving into safe havens. We're starting to see people gravitate back to real money, physical silver, physical gold. This is the silver chart. Look how it nosedived on the back of the Dow and the stock markets plunging back in March. They took the paper price of silver all the way down to 12 and change, and it's up 50% since then, hitting about $18.50 as we're having this conversation today, Max. Do you want to talk a little bit about silver and gold in physical form versus the paper?
Well, I think, all asset classes correlate in a time of uncertainty and panic. You saw that in 2008 financial crisis. And then you saw that with the moves in both gold equities, silver, as you alluded to in March across the board. And the only thing that really they said didn't go down in value is real estate. But let me tell you, real estate moves a lot slower than these other markets. So with that being said, I wasn't surprised to see silver go where it was. I saw it as a tremendous buying opportunity personally. I myself bought some option calls and leaps on silver prices that should pan out very well for myself. And then from a technical basis, I think, silver is just broken out today above $18 an ounce. I think once it holds that, it's going to have legs and move much higher. In terms of the ratio between silver to gold, at one point, I think it got as low as 136 ounces of silver to 1 ounce gold. Today, it's moved back below 100, but the longer term ratio for that is between 50 to 60 ounce silver for 1 ounce gold. And everything reverts to mean reversion is a very powerful thing. With that being said, I don't see precious metals in terms of gold coming back, and that's going to mean that once silver breaks out like it has this morning, it's going to have a big move upside. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw silver make a move like it did in 2007, because again, you're going to have an increased demand immediately. Right now, if you look at demand for silver every year, 50% of silver demand is industrial. 20% is jewelry, and about 17% of it is for investment purposes, as a currency per se or a hedge. And I know that that's been growing, and I think it's been growing even more so in the first 6 months of this year. So, and I think that trend is going to continue to happen. So I'm very optimistic on the silver price, as well as really all metals, quite frankly, given what they're doing to the dollar and kind of the global macro factors at play here.
Yeah. Well, and have you seen what platinum has been doing? Platinum is telling us an important story, too, really skyrocketing back towards the price it should be at. Silver at $18.50. And what I find really fascinating, Max, is that if you go to the big silver and gold retailers on the internet, they're asking more than $10 an ounce over spot for silver eagles. And we're seeing the same thing with kilo bars, many dollars over spot price, the paper price. So Max, with silver and gold and platinum, with all the metals, the base metals, all of these metals going higher finally, what does that mean for a guy like you leading a company like Callinex, where you guys are involved in the exploration and development of both precious metals and base metals?
I mean, it's obviously a renewed interest in the sector, which is great to see. We'll have capital inflows coming back into the miners. You're already seeing that, obviously, in the gold, given all the tension that's got on gold. And actually, if you look at gold in general, gold gets about half of exploration dollars out there. So, I mean, it's great to see everyone finally pay attention to the sector. I think there's going to be a lot more attention and money flow into the sector moving forward. And for a group of people like ourselves that are so passionate what we do, it's great to see that other people are excited about our business as well.
Do you want to talk just a little bit about who your biggest shareholders are? Tell us a little bit more about the company, and then I want to circle back to the Fed and the dollar. Who are some of the biggest shareholders? And then tell us about the market cap versus assets.
Yeah, in terms of our largest shareholders, the largest institutional shareholders, Resource Capital Funds, they're a private equity fund that specializes in natural resource investing. And they've got a long, really exceptional track record in doing that. They've been a shareholder of the company since 2015 and own just under 10% of the shares outstanding. In terms of management, we have a significant position. Myself, I own roughly 4% of the outstanding shares right now. I've been a heavy buyer in the open market over the last year, as well as in our recent financing. So, again, we're all vested in looking forward and excited about the future for the company. In terms of valuation, and the valuation of the company today, we've got roughly a $5 to $6 million market cap. And to kind of give you a comparison, before we had acquired any of the portfolio of assets in Eastern Canada that we're very excited about and it aggressively moved forward, based upon one discovery hole that we hit in Flin Flon at one time, we had a $65 million valuation. And I think that just shows you the ability of exploration and the returns you can see in a very short period of time based upon discoveries. So right now, in terms of the company itself, we've most recently completed a very big exploration campaign in the Bathurst camp at our Nash Creek and Superjack projects. And we just recently announced the discovery of more additional zinc lead mineralization just east of the Nash Creek deposit that has a 2018 PEA published on it over a 1.1 kilometer strike. And then what's really quite exciting is along trend to the south, we actually came up with silver. We hit a silver discovery hole, which is very exciting in that it's near surface and along the same trend that hosts the Nash Creek deposit to the north and is wide open. So we're really excited about the initial results from the drilling campaign. We've got a lot of news flow coming out from that campaign in Bathurst in the coming weeks. And then in the Flin Flon camp of Manitoba, and it's really an area that we're passionate explorers of. Our technical team's got a lot of success in the area, and having found 3 of the 4 largest mines in that camp's history. And the exploration there comes at a time when, again, the 777 mine shutting down in Q2 2022. And that town is in desperate need of a discovery, and we've taken a new approach there, and we'll be outlining the exploration results from that campaign in the near future, as well as follow up both in Bathurst, Flin Flon, and then we've got in Newfoundland at our Point Leamington project a large historic gold, zinc, copper deposit that we're working on updating, making 43101 compliant, as well as we've got some regional targets that we're generating that again we'll be drill testing later this year that we're quite excited about. So across the board, we're focused on discovering 3 mines and 3 camps in 2020, and really undeterred by the overall macro environment. In fact, I think it's improving as each day goes by.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one more question just about jurisdiction. So much geopolitical turmoil globally going on. I mean, mines literally being shut down on the back of the COVID crisis. What do things look like up there in Canada, at least jurisdictionally speaking? I mean, I think that's a benefit to be up in Canada as opposed to a far riskier place in the world. Do you want to tell people just a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So jurisdiction is key because government and the rule of law is obviously very important. We were very in a very safe jurisdiction being in Canada. Where a lot of areas around the world were shut down or their operations were shut down. A lot of people didn't realize it, but at one point during the pandemic, you had 10% of copper mines around the world shut down, and roughly 17% of zinc supply shut down for a short period of time. And that was due to government policy and the fear around the spread of that virus in those communities. In Manitoba, for example, they deemed it an essential industry in the middle of the pandemic. We were really lucky, and we were able to actually mobilize a drill crew in mid-April at a time when really everyone was pulling back. We were aggressively moving forward. So really hats off to the governments of Manitoba, New Brunswick, as well as Newfoundland for being pro-mining. And one of the key things about our portfolio that makes it so unique is proximity to infrastructure. Where else can you go and explore where you have it? And a discovery can mean a lot of economic growth and prosperity for these communities that have kind of long been forgotten in a lot of ways. If you look at the 777 mine, as I mentioned before, it's shutting down in a very short period of time. Hudbay, the big mining operator in the area, has stated very publicly that they are shutting down exploration in the Flin Flon area. And that puts us in a really great position as far as I can say. If you make a discovery there, then obviously you're going to get a lot of attention because there's an immediate need for that kind of discovery. If you look at the Bathurst camp, it's no different. You've got the Nash Creek Superjet projects in proximity to infrastructure. Trevally, the operator of the Caribou Mine and Mill, actually shut down their production there during the pandemic due to zinc prices. And that mill sitting idle, and I don't believe that deposit is going to come back, or mine's going to go back into production in the near future, if at all in the foreseeable future, depending on obviously where metal prices go, due to the specifics around that deposit. And then in Newfoundland, again, you've got another mill sitting idle that's operated by Teck, the Duck Pond Mill. So in each 3 of those jurisdictions, you've got the geologic pedigree and a mineral endowment there that's got a long-standing history, and you've got all that infrastructure in place that is there, which reduces your upfront capital costs. And not only that, but it's infrastructure that's in immediate need. It's not a situation where the 777 mine, for example, is just going into production in 2004. And we're waiting a long period of time before there's a need for a feed for that town and that community. So again, I think we're doing exploration, in a great jurisdiction in Canada, in these provinces that have that rich mineral endowment, and they've got a rule of law, a rich mining history, and they are very supportive of our endeavors, and we want to see discoveries made.
Yeah. Well, it's CNX in Canada and CLLXF, I believe, on the OTC guys for Callinex Mines. The infrastructure. You want to talk about immediate need. There's an immediate need for physical silver and gold all over the world, Max. People are hungering for real money on the back of all this money printing. Now, the major mining companies have led the market higher since March. Who are the buyers of these stocks in your view? Is it the retail investor, or is it institutions positioning for an expected bull market?
Well, you're certainly seeing institutions come back in a big way into the mining space. So that was very, very positive to see. And then you're also seeing retail flowing back in the space. Retail money, in a lot of ways, has been distracted for in the past number of years, whether it be biotech or marijuana or what have you. But I think right now you're seeing that in the precious metal space, and you're going to see that, and you are seeing in silver as well, and across the board, I think when people wisen up to everything that's happening around the world, they're going to want to position themselves where they can see appreciation of their investment. And I think mining is definitely the place, and discoveries are definitely going to be the place. Now you're going to see the as you mentioned, these big producers lead, and they have led. But once this market has got some more legs to it and has kind of been built a longer term foundation, you're going to see all that money trickle down to the smaller names like Callinex and the juniors. So our time is coming. Very, very excited, and very excited to have the discoveries that I mentioned, and obviously news flow coming out in the future to take advantage of that and really execute on our vision and our strategy.
All right. Last question. If we circle back to the Fed, the dollar has really been the leader of the world, the currency that everybody wants for a very, very long time. How much longer do you think that can continue on the back of all this printing? But, in defense of the Fed, they're certainly not the only central bank printing. How much longer can the dollar be the leader of the world?
I mean, I see the dollar as the foreseeable leader. I don't see what would change that, quite honestly. I mean, I don't know a whole bunch of people that are going to go wearing renminbis or, Swiss francs or anything like that. The U.S. dollar has always been that way. But again, I am concerned with the printing that's gone on, and I do believe that an allocation to precious metals is absolutely key to any portfolio.
Well, let's just do this, though. Let's flush that out a little further, because I agree with you. The dollar is, I guess, the best of the worst. But when we think about the printing, the digital creation of currency in the trillions of dollars, the Fed's balance sheet now exceeds $7 trillion. That was inconceivable just a few years ago. Where do the prices of silver and gold end up if and when that money makes its way into the real world economy? And I'm implying inflation, or maybe eventually hyperinflation. What does that do to silver and gold?
Well, gold and silver are going to perform well in both the deflationary and inflationary environment. It's only when you're kind of sitting flat that it's not that exciting in terms of the potential for a move in the metal prices. So I definitely do see metal prices moving much higher. I don't see gold ever going back below it is. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see gold move past 2,000, and when it goes past 2,000, it's not coming back. And silver prices are going to move in lockstep and in tandem to that. So it is a great place to be in terms of everything's going on and how soon or what. I mean, I really don't pick calls in terms of what day. I just look at longer, bigger picture themes. And the dollar is not a place I necessarily want to be in. I don't want to focus on hard assets. And like I said, I put my money where my mouth is. A big percentage of my wealth is either in Callinex, which inherently gives us exposure, or other investments related to hard assets.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people agree with that assessment. They don't want to be in fiat dollars, and I think that explains to a large degree why the paper price of silver might be $18.50 or so. But if you want to go buy it from any of these online retailers that sell silver and gold, you're going to be paying closer to $28 an ounce or $30 an ounce for a silver eagle. I know that's hard for people to believe.
Yeah, but I think that also underpins how quickly an increase in demand that you've seen in the silver market has been for as an investment or a hedge. On an annual basis, silver demand is roughly 17% is for currency, another 20% is for jewelry. And you had demand for silver last year grow by 12% roughly for investment demand. But when you have an immediate surge in investment demand, you get situations like you're seeing and you're commenting on for the physical out there. So I think it's going to be an exciting place to be.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just get excited about this because it also speaks to the supply. It speaks to the shortage of the actual physical metal, which tells the real story about what's going on at the COMEX, right? We see the paper price so much lower than the real world physical price because supply is constrained. There is not nearly as much physical silver and gold, but silver specifically that we're talking about now. There's not nearly as much physical silver in the world compared to what trades on the COMEX every day. These bankers, these banking institutions, in some cases, Max, will trade the entire world's global production in a couple of days on the COMEX. So that's how we know the real world price and the physical price will continue to diverge until the COMEX, until the back of the COMEX is broken, in my view.
And I think that silver is going to be unique in the sense that historically gold is really, silver's got the big silver demand is going to be industrial demand, and then obviously the jewelry and the investment demand. If you look at gold's big part is going to be jewelry investment as a currency. But the one thing with gold is that the U.S. government in history has gone back and confiscated the gold. In the silver markets, I think it's going to be much more difficult industrial. Whereas for gold, I think it's less than 10% of gold demands industrial use. So I wouldn't even be surprised if people start seeing that or are concerned that the government does that again, like they did in 1941. That they diversify and not only hold gold, but also hold more silver than they probably inherently would, just to hedge themselves in that.
That's interesting. And I haven't heard anybody give that viewpoint, but it's an interesting one because, people like Warren Buffett, well, that is interesting. Warren Buffett did at one point have a huge position in silver. But of course, more recently, he's even called gold a barbarous relic. I don't know if he's going to be feeling that way in the next decade because these fiat dollars and these inflated stock prices, I think people are really starting to see through this Ponzi scheme, again, in my view.
I'm going to interject, but with Buffett, it's quite unique. Because in days past, the market really would look to Buffett to go long the U.S. And that would be the indicator in terms of, a turn, was Buffett kind of giving conviction. But what happened this time, which is kind of unique, and I've been watching this and I made an investment actually based upon this, was Buffett made a call to move out of the airlines. And you saw the complete opposite happen with the retail investor. You've had massive inflows into the airlines by the retail investor as Buffett says he's exiting. So it's actually contrarian, which, hindsight would have said Buffett says move out of the airlines, the retail money is going to move out of the airlines with Buffett. Mm-hmm. Buffett goes move out of the airlines, and, I've been watching the only airline ETF, and last week within 2 days, this ETF went up $200 million in AUM, which is huge. And we're talking about an ETF that I've been watching since it got founded. It was, historically around a $50-100 million ETF, is now in a very short period of time going to $900 million US, and that just shows you the retail inflows, and retail inflows going against really the Oracle of Omaha in his calls. So I mean, you can say Buffett says this, Buffett says that. Buffett's not always right. He's a human, makes mistakes, or might make the wrong call. You got to respect the man, obviously, and I have a deep admiration and respect for what he's done in his career and in his opinions. But it doesn't mean he's always right, and doesn't mean everyone always listens. And you're seeing that in silver. You're seeing that in ETFs as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I do remember him getting out of the airline stocks. That's interesting. I didn't know so much retail money had piled in. With respect to Buffett, maybe he's the barbarous relic. We'll see. He's got an awful long track record of success.
On this one, I'm betting if Buffett's not going long silver, I'm betting against Buffett.
That's right. Let me ask you, you've got some really cool artifacts and art back on your wall there. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I traveled up until the pandemic quite extensively, and everywhere I went, I come across some different unique people, and I was able to acquire some masks. So my favorite one, if I was going to talk one, is the one that'd be over my right here on the screen. Mm-hmm. I actually got from the Congo. I was in the Congo to see the silverbacks about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and I had the opportunity to meet actually a Canadian doctor that treats all 87 habituated gorillas in the wild. And he had that at his office, and he gave it to me as a gift. So each one of them comes from somewhere unique, from a different story. And we're all made up of our stories and experiences. And I kind of use those to remind me of where I've been, where I'm going. And I told them when I had that, I said, listen, it's going to be in my office wall, and I'm going to further what you do and the work that you do through that, because it's going to be a conversation piece, and here we are talking about it. So each one of them comes from somewhere else: the Congo, Beijing, one from Denver, the other one's from Kenya, and there's a couple from Barcelona as well as London there. So
very cool.
I'm sure I'll get some more in the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. I was just curious. Those are neat. All right. Yeah. Well, guys, our guest has been Max Porterfield. He's the CEO and director of Callinex Mines. Do you want to shout out the tickers for folks, Max? Yeah, always. We can purchase our stock on the OTC in the United States under the ticker CLLXF, as well as in the Toronto Venture under the ticker CNX. And our website's callinex.ca. That's CALLINEX.ca. And all our contact details are on there if you'd like to reach out and have a more in-depth conversation. All right. Very good. Guys, this is not a recommendation to buy or sell any stocks. I am not a financial planner or advisor, so do your own due diligence. But Max, you're a good guy, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you. I always appreciate you having me. Thanks so much for tuning in, friends. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly over there at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless, guys. Bye-bye.
And they believe that by putting the Bible under the Apollo square, that it's being bound beneath a 666 grid, and therefore they're constraining the power of God, so that the power of God delivered through the Bible cannot be exercised in the city of DC.